Hello and good afternoon. Welcome back to the channel as we are continuing our look at Errant, a so-called fantasy role-playing game. That's pretty much the only little description they give. I will pull it up in a minute. I'm trying to think, are there any programming notes? Yes, I believe I have dos. Number 1 is I am going to schedule it. I swear it. The appendix or tertian of me would like to take part. Please go ahead and get that read by this weekend, or by the end of this weekend. You have the rest of the weekend to read it before Monday. And Restream is telling me that I have an oopsie going on. Hopefully it is okay. So hopefully if you're seeing any outages, I apologize. There are top men working on it right now. Top men. In other news, I think mostly because it was registered for this what is happening? Please. I'm not. I published one this morning. The forums. Me having issues. An issue. So I'm not sure what people. Oh my god. Negative Ghost Rider. Issues. Who's got the issues? Issues. I don't know what's going on. All right, am I back? Ugh, sorry about that. Restream in the browser works well 99% of the time, and then that 1%, which I seem to be in right now, is it's giving me all kinds of issues. Hopefully, I'm now okay. I was trying to say that I'm getting more, I think, due to the fact that my email's floating around marketing circles since I got press passes for Gen Con, not this coming year. I'm not sure if I'm going to apply. But last year's Gen Con, and then the past PAX Unplugged. So I think more folks, or so I got, a press release. Somebody sent me out a press release the other day that I pushed out onto the forum. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them ultimately. I still got to figure out if it's something I want to get into doing, because some of the stuff is cool and I enjoy it, but it's not my main focus necessarily, but it's kind of fun. So if you go look to the forums, Terrence, hey Terrence, I'm back. Great. You can see that it was for this one was actually pretty cool. It's for a D20 Modern. They're bringing back D20 Modern with a game called Everyday Heroes. Jeff Grubb, who was one of the original authors of the original D20 Modern, is involved. Seems pretty cool. You can go to the go deals. All right. It's not. Back. Am I back? Am I back? Oh, oh, what lovely times we live in. I think, Terrence, I think I'm finally back. Finally back. Sorry. I had to do a stealth reboot. Hopefully fixed it. Whoops, that's great for Alyssa, but the wrong thing. Thank you, Ian. I was trying to say for the 800th time, I'll make it super fast. I'm starting to get press releases from people. I'm not quite sure what to do with them. I posted this first one, kind of the first official one that I got. Not only was someone kind enough to send it to me, which is flattering in and of itself, but they actually sent it to me ahead of time. And first time I had to deal with someone saying, "Hey, here's this press release. Can you please not share it until Thursday?" Obviously today. So that one out is about Everyday Heroes. So they're bringing back D20 Modern. It's pretty cool. But I've wasted enough time with all this madness. So let's get back into Errant, which is the whole reason for this shebang. Oh, it's Thursday. It's every day. Okay, we're back to Errant. Yes, I'm back. I'm back again. I should be here to stay. I just need to you know what? I'm working on stuff, and I decide. I think to myself, okay, it seems like the browser and Restream's doing fine. I don't need to reboot, and then this happens. I think I just need to make a hard stop of everything I'm doing, like 10 minutes before stream reboot. Because it seems like on the reboot, none of these bad things happen. Where we were left off, I believe we had finished off with items. Just going to bounce in here just to see if there's anything we missed. I think we did it all, because I think we were on retainers. Retainer prices and descriptions. And morale. So I think that's all good. So we can move on to errands. All right. I'm guessing Errants are player characters. They haven't specifically said so, I think. Or maybe they have just slightly, but they've just been calling them Errants, leaving it to us to guess. But I think from the context, I believe Errants are our PCs. Determine attributes. To generate an Errant's attributes, we're going to roll 4d4 and record the scores for each attribute in this order: physique, skill, mind, presence. Afterwards, you may choose to swap the scores of 2 attributes. So a couple things to notice here. We're not doing 3d6, 4d6, some version of d6. We're doing 4d4, which is going to give us a max of 16, but an average of 9. I believe, because it ends up being, I think it always ends up being basically half 0.5. So if you're rolling 3d6, half of 3d6 is it ends up being the odds of, or end up being 9.5, I think. So you end up with 10. 46 bumps that up, I think, to 12. So I think 44, your average will be 9. Someone can correct me. The statisticians and the folks who deal with percentages, or not percentages, odds and things, can let me know if I'm correct or not. Jason Hobbs, so confused. Aren't we all? But welcome. Thanks for coming. Okay, so after we've figured out these attributes, and just to, for those who may not have seen the first part yesterday, Errant only has 4 attributes. That is physique, which is a combination of strength and constitution; skill, which I think is mostly your dexterity; and then mind and presence are kind of a hodgepodge of some intelligence, some wisdom, some charisma. Presence is mostly charisma. Mind and is, I can't remember if that one's mostly wisdom and intelligence. It's somewhere in there. Go back and watch part 1 where I go through where they define the attributes. I'm not sure, the layout of this is interesting. Obviously this card.co has a specific way you kind of lay out your single page sites, because there's another rule set that I also want to look at that's also hosted on this platform, and it has a similar layout, so it's pretty similar. So I feel like maybe it has a fixed way of laying things out. Excuse me. But I might have organized things a little bit differently. Like, why not tell me what the attributes are and then this determination, instead of me having to jump back to another area? Anyhow, after we've got our attributes, we then choose our ancestry, which is our Errant's heritage, and we decide which of the 4 ancestry templates best matches it, and roll for your minimum starting age. You can choose to be older, but not younger. All right, so the Ancestries, it looks like they're not specifically species style, though they have species in parenthetically listed. So we've got tough, and in parentheses they comment dwarves, orcs, etc. Then there's arcane, and here they parenthetically refer to elves, demons, etc. Then cunning, parenthetically halflings, goblins, etc. And then adaptable, humans, half-humans, etc. So tough, it looks like with each of these ancestries we get some kind of boon, some kind of special trick. Once per session, when you would be reduced to 0 hit points, you may choose to be reduced to 1 hit point instead. Minimum starting age is 2d20 plus 10. I think that's basically the orcish or half-orcish thing that you get in 5th edition, if you choose the orc. Or maybe it's the orc class, I think. Jason Hobbs says, I think it's a question mark at the end of each sentence. At this point, there should be question marks in all my sentences. I don't even know. Jason, if you're joining a little bit late, I had several crashes trying to get this going. So that's why I have these question marks, because I'm almost wondering, is it going to crash after I say this, or am I good to go? I think now I'm good to go. Okay, so tough, you get that. I want to say it's an orc. In 5th edition, it's an orc class feature. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you get dropped to 0, you can choose to drop to 1 instead. Why you would choose not to use this, I'm not sure, but it is your choice. No one can force you to do that. But it is only once per session, so maybe, I guess the choice is, if you think that someone's around to revive you right away, don't waste it. Then save it. For Arcane, once per session, you can attempt to perform a minor magical feat related to your ancestry. To do this, you roll 2d6 and add your renown, and on a 10 plus, you succeed. On a 7 to 9, a complication occurs. On a 6 or lower failure, and your minimum starting age is 3d20 plus 10. We haven't said, so I guess they're really leaving it, unless they're going to talk in more detail later. I guess minor magical feat, we're talking kind of prestidigitation type thing. I'm not sure. It would be nice to, and again, in case you missed it from the last one, or you're tuning into this one first, this is kind of an SRD style document. They did tell us right up front. I think we've run into one kind of example. They're not getting a lot of examples. They're not giving us a lot of things. Oh, this is pretty bare bones, a bare bones distribution of the rules. So we're getting kind of the sort of the bare minimum. So some of the stuff inspires questions. I think it was Brian Blather yesterday who was in the channel, in the chat, who mentioned that there was a Kickstarter for this. I believe the Kickstarter is over. So it did get funded successfully. So there is going to be a more fully fleshed out version of these rules coming. I don't know if it's however they're distributing it. I'm assuming drive-through or Exalted Funeral or however they're itch. I don't know where it's going, but there will be a more fully fleshed out version of the rules. If you read this or listen to this and you think, wow, I really love it and you want it, something more is coming. But this is free. You can go to errantrpg.card.co. I think I used my own URL. Shortened version is in the show description. So you can also get it through there. Completely free of charge, though it isn't. I don't know if there's a way to print it out nicely. I didn't see anything for PDF, so it's kind of just in screen format right now. Terrence says, I read through the Ancestries last night. I kind of like the whole generic categories thing, but I'm also a fan of 5e's put your stat bonuses wherever thing, too. Yeah, I'm torn. I mean, part of my OSR thing that I like is this idea that you know, this is your DNA. Now, in say BX, they actually give you a lot of methods to move things around, but you can't move willy-nilly. I think your constitution is basically your constitution, and maybe your charisma is I don't remember. I think at least constitution, I think they say specifically you cannot move things around to your constitution. I think that you also can do that after you pick your class, because I believe it's like you can do these things. If you're a fighter, you can move things around to make your strength better, or if you're a wizard, you can move things around to make your intelligence better, you know, that kind of thing. So I feel like something where letting you swap one is good. I mean, look, if for the ultimate choice, being able to put your bonuses kind of wherever you like and do that is fine. But for me, I think maybe just the way I like to play and just kind of the mind space I get into is I like something of it being like, well, this is who you are. And then the trick is part of the challenge as a player, maybe the more gamist challenge, is how far can you get with that? Okay, so your guy's slow, not exactly the smartest star in this constellation. They're not particularly strong, but can you make this guy hero? Can you get him to, you know, how high can you go? Let's see what you can do with that. Let's see if you can do that starting material, which I think I appreciate just as a fun thing. Ian says BX is weird of what they allow you to move around. Yeah, it is a little bit weird. I think they try to base it on kind of what your class. It's kind of interesting. So you get your attributes, then you pick your class, and then once you picked your class, you can go back and monkey with your attributes in a limited way to make you better at your class, which is kind of cool in its own way, and which I think is how people tend to do it anyway, right? If you're in 5th edition and you roll something up, let's say, you would probably figure out, okay, with these stats, I'd like to be such and such, and then I'll try to move things around to maximize whatever that such and such is. What else do we have here? Okay, so we did Arcane, where you can do some kind of minor magical feat, but what started me on this tangent was they're not defining minor magical feat, and they probably won't, because this is a bare bones kind of minimum needed to run the game set of rules, version of the rules, I should say. Cunning, once per session, you may re-roll any d20 roll. That's easy enough. Minimum starting age is 1d20 plus 10, and then humans, half humans, etc., or the adaptable trait or ancestry. Once per session, you may choose to use one attribute for a check in lieu of another. Minimum starting age is 1d10 plus 10. That's an interesting one, too. So if you were really strong but stupid, or, you know, just, I guess stupid's not the right word. If you're really strong but you lack mind, once in a session, you can use your strength to overcome a mind challenge. I probably would want to put a caveat, though. Maybe it's unfair, but I think it'd have to make sense somehow. if you go in for a chemistry exam and this is like, okay, roll your mind to see if you pass your chemistry exam, and then he goes, I'm going to use my strength. I'd kind of like to know how that's supposed to work. And maybe you think, well, that's mean. It's only once per session, but it's not as open-ended as some of these other ones. But I don't know. I that's just, I would want to know, even if it's humorous. Maybe you say, you know what, or I'm going to let you do it, but you're going to have to figure out how you translate your strength into intelligence. Terrence says, maybe major stat bonuses should just be attached to classes in general. It's not a bad idea. And Ian says, Gork, can you solve the puzzle? Gork punches the puzzle. Yes, that's one way to solve it. There was a funny, there was a French comedy team called Les Inconnus, which they're hilarious. And then they had a sketch, I guess it was based on a real French TV show, or some kind of reality show, where they would go to this island and have to just do kind of silly puzzles, but in this sort of castle island atmosphere. And in there, in the Les Inconnus, when they did their parody of it, basically, they would do stuff like destroy the puzzle. Like they had one of those where you had to shift tiles on the floor, and underneath was a key, and they're supposed to shift it around so that the one, if those little puzzles where you have to shift the puzzle pieces around to put it all together, so the gap is in one place, the hole, because there's one missing. In a square or rectangle. So, but they ended up just pulling all the tiles up, and they were supposed to answer a riddle, and instead they just threaten the guy and then throw him off a tower into the ocean, kind of thing. Funny stuff. But yeah, that might be one way, right? You're at the chemistry exam. How do you use your strength to solve it? I threaten the teacher. I threaten to punch the teacher's face in if they don't give me an A. Fair enough. All right, so now after we've picked our ancestry type, now we have to determine our failed profession. We're going to roll on the failed professions table, or choose a background from what your errant did before they became an adventurer. Did they do this before? Or is this going to take us down the list? No, it's taking us. So we have a D100, which gives a whole bunch of failed professions. I'm not going to go through all these, but there is a lot from, acrobat, alewife, ice cutter, messenger, mountebank, mushroom farmer. I don't know what a powder monkey is, but a stable hand, a doll maker, a funeral clown. Now we're talking. A gymnasiarch. I don't even know what some of these are. A whiffler, worm rancher. Funny. If you're listening to this rather than watching this, you can't tell, but there's no explanations given or descriptions or anything for these. A bee exterminator. Who would be a bee exterminator? Maybe a wasp exterminator. Whole bunch of failed professions. But the one thing maybe is and maybe they'll do this in the full book, is I do like when you pick you want to call it whatever you did before you became an adventurer, or they call it a failed profession, something you get out of it. Maybe a piece of kit you have. So say if you were a bee exterminator, you have a net, and you have a slightly better save versus poisons or something, because you've been stung just boatloads of times. I don't know. Ian mentions whipping boy. Yeah, as one of the professions. And Terrence says, if you stop being a gong farmer, I can hardly call that failing. Yes. And Terrence also says, fighter enters a philosophy debate, wins by headbutting the opponent. Absolutely. And then the opponent could say, you have a dizzying effect, before they fall over. Now we get an archetype. So here they're not called classes, but these are clearly something akin to a class. We have the violent, the deviant, the zealot, and the occult. So the violent is combat focused, deviant is skill focused, zealot is religious focused, covenants and miracles, and the occult is a student of sorceries and grimoires. Oh, Jason, thank you. Looked up Whiffler. A person who frequently shifts opinions, attitudes, interests, etc. A person who is vacillating or evasive in an argument. I didn't know that could be a profession. But I like it. I like it. Well, what did you do for a living there, Bob? Oh, I was a professional whiffler. Yeah. So what does that entail? Well, I frequently shift opinions, attitudes, and interests. I vacillate or am evasive in arguments. Fair enough. Kind of like that guy in the argument sketch in Monty Python. Maybe that's what a whiffler. Maybe that's a textbook definition of a professional whiffler. Starting equipment. So we start off with all errants start with. So no matter what you choose, whatever your failed profession is, whatever your ancestry and your archetypes are, you get a backpack, you get some kind of medium weapon, you get a quiver of ammunition if needed, a bedroll, a torch. I would take if you're giving away quivers, game, Errant, you're giving me a quiver. Even if I have no bow, no crossbow, no nothing, I'm taking the quiver. Forget if needed. If it's offered, I'm taking it. Oh, and then Terrence and Jason both mentioned politician. Very nice. Yes, politicians would definitely count, I think, as whifflers for the most part. So you also get a bedroll, a torch, 50 feet of rope, a mess kit, a tinderbox. What's the difference between a mess kit and rations? A mess kit, I guess, is for preparing food, and the rations are the food. Also, a water skin and 4 supply. Supply, if we recall, is that sort of abstraction of a bunch of things. So you have a torch, but then if you want more torches, you can pull them from supply, but only as long as you have your torch. So you can basically, if you have one of something that is supplyable, you can rearm it, refuel it from your supply kind of thing. But I think supply could also count for rations. You could kind of refill your rations from the supply. I think there's different things, but I think that's the gist of how supply works. In addition to equipment based on their archetype, the violent starts with either a heavy weapon or a small or large shield. The deviant starts with either burglar's tools or alchemist tools. The zealot starts with one of their relics, and the occult starts with 4 grimoires of their starting sorceries. I've seen this before where I get where these games are coming from, these rules. I don't like the idea of you having 4 grimoires. To me, just in my brain, I see a grimoire as one of those big, heavy, a big, sizable book. It's something that you have 1 of, not something that you're carrying around 4 of, and it's not really heavy. Maybe I just need to wrap my mind around what they mean by grimoire, but I wish they would just mean with, say, a grimoire with 4 filled pages. Because I believe that's what they're referring to is 4 spells. Just say spells, 4 pages. I don't know. I've seen this in another game where they mentioned like, oh, you have 4 spell books, 1 for every spell. It's like, why are we calling it a spell book? A spell book? Can't we just call it a page or a scroll? Something of that. If we don't want to worry about a singular spell book for whatever reason, can we just say 4 scrolls? I just think if you were going to talk books or grimoires, just my image of them is something sizable, thick. Languages. All errants could speak whatever the common language of their region is, as well as any language related to their ancestry. In addition, for every point of mind above 10, an errant may specify another language known. And then we can record other information. Finally, note any other information an errant may need to know. I guess, and how do we know what's important? So here's their list. Their hit points is equal to their physique. How many item slots they have is also equal to their physique. Their speed, which is equal to their skill minus encumbrance divided by 4. Their alignment, which starts at no, except for zealots who belong to lawful or arcanic covenants who start at either L1 or C1, respectively. I think... All right. Let me backtrack here. I think alignment starts at neutral 0, as I'm guessing what that means. And then we have lawful 1 and chaos 1, or law 1, chaos 1, I guess. And presumably we're going to see some kind of scaling or spectrum here that we can look and see what that means. Jason says, I think that has come from OSR adjacent crowd for more narrative-focused games, which also use gear slots. Yeah, I think a lot of it, and just also things like, I think some OSR just, I guess, I wouldn't necessarily say just OSR adjacent, but I think some OSR games have tried to simplify encumbrance and slots. It's kind of gamey. It has a kind of video gamey feel, but I'd rather simple, and it does allow them to do some interesting things, because once you're just kind of counting slots, I really do like this idea of your encumbrance and your encumbrance and your fatigue can basically be expressed as you're filling up those slots, so that the more fatigued you get, the less you can carry. And then the more you're butting up against those margins, the more exhausted you get, which takes away. Like I really think there's some interesting things you could do there, which it's harder to do or it doesn't work out as well when I think the slots just make it. Maybe I'd say that simplification or that way of looking at it is sort of generic, vague, mechanical slots has some advantages in the way you can mix and match it with other mechanics, which I think is interesting. So I don't think it's just necessarily that they're getting more narrative, because this certainly, Jason, if you missed it, if you go back and either read the rules or go back and watch the first part, there's some interesting things they do in terms of figuring out things like traveling and moving around, and that encumbrance and fatigue and stuff that play into, or that these slots play into, which I thought was interesting. It's not the first time I've seen it other places, but it's cool. Whoops, sorry, my chair clanked. Terrence says, maybe they should just make spell books especially heavy, like 3 gear slots with a set number of spell capacity. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's the one thing I was like, I never minded the kind of spell books being sort of have infinite pages. I get why you might want to have them separate. I just don't know why they come up with some other way of saying it or doing it. I don't know. The idea of like, I have 4 grimoires in my pocket. I just start to get that little bit of like, what? Like, is a grimoire not mean what I think it means? Or is just my vision of what a grimoire is different than everybody else's? Jason says, OSR versus OSR, Jason, are probably defined differently by us. I did miss it. Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, the whole idea of what is OSR is going to vary differently between a bunch of people. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much neutral on the home game. I'm still counting encumbrance and items kind of as kind of BX vanilla, but I'm not necessarily opposed to slots. I think though I would definitely want some of the things that this system does if I was going to use slots, which is that by simplifying it and abstracting it into slots, what does that give us other than just easier accounting? And I don't find the accounting on a player basis is that onerous. What else is it doing for us? And this one, and again, I've seen other systems do it, do give back something, okay? We're going to abstract the slots, but we're going to use that to enable some other things which are interesting, and I definitely in kind of the OSR wheelhouse in terms of things that come into play, and hex crawls and wilderness campaigns and things like that. So, and moving around, and a lot of those ticking clocks and things that I feel like OSR games are built on. Now we're on to covenants and miracles. The Zealot does not have a set list of spells which they can perform, as in some other games. Rather, they pledge themselves to a covenant, which may be the cult of a deity or even a philosophy or ideology to which they are entirely devoted. Every covenant has 3 or 4 eminences, subjects or concepts which they are associated with and hold power over. The covenant of a sun god, for example, may have eminences in light, fire, and growth. The Zealot can at any time attempt to perform a miracle, a supernatural feat that is related to their covenant's eminences. They may, for example, make the light of their lantern shine brightly enough to blind an enemy, or a tree to grow taller so they can climb to a high spot. To perform a miracle, the Zealot rolls a d6 plus an additional d6 for each relic to which they are attuned, and sum the result. High rolls indicate success, while low rolls presage failure, doom, or even death. Miracles are broken down into 4 power levels, known as doctrines. The more powerful the miracles, the higher the doctrine, the higher the roll needed for success. When the Zealot describes the miracle they wish to perform, the guide will determine what doctrine it falls under. Each doctrine lists examples of miracles which fit into their power level. Favor can be used to increase the result of a miracle roll. By performing actions that please their covenant, the Zealot may permanently increase their amount of favor. The Zealot is free to argue their case around whether an action ought to award increased favor, but the final decision, as always, rests with the guide. The Zealot can also attempt to heal their allies by performing beneficence, which works much the same way as performing a miracle. The Zealot also receives 2 blessings specific to their covenant, special abilities which they can use at will. The full extent of these blessings, as well as the full rules for performing miracles and beneficence, are delineated in the testament of their covenant. One such testament follows. The guide may wish to have some covenants prepared for their players to select from, or they may allow players to create their own covenants. For the latter option, there is no need to do this before a session and have a full testament created. Simply have the player list the eminences of their covenant, which should suffice for a session of play, and write up the testament afterwards in between sessions. So I really like this stuff. It sounds really cool. I'm almost torn. The only thing I'm torn on is, I'm not saying I'm torn on it, but it's one of those things, where you're trying to read it and they're introducing you to these terms. So they're using some terms to define some other terms. They're going to use it, and then you end up with a line like, you need so much doctrines to perform a beneficence that fits in a blessing in your eminence that matches your covenant. And it's kind of, my head sort of reels a little bit, but I get it because they have to kind of define their terms. But it can make for a little bit of confusion when you're kind of given all this at a big block. And and especially on something like a stream where you're reading it, you don't really have a chance to absorb it as much as you might want. I'm really interested to see their example because I really like this concept speaks to me. So we have an example testament. Testament of the Horned Mother. You have made covenant with the Horned Mother, she whose body was stolen, goddess eminent of generation, vision, time, and woe. And I say horned because I'm thinking, though I don't know, that there's an accent over the E, which leads me to believe that we're supposed to pronounce it and not leave it silent. So that is where my pronunciation comes from. Let me know if you find that is incorrect and I should be saying something like horned or horned or just horned. Beneficence. Your covenant blesses you with the power of beneficence. I'm not sure why they need to do that. Allowing you to heal wounds and cure ailments. When you wish to do so, roll a d6 plus an additional d6 for each relic to which you are attuned. I also like the idea of attuning to the relics. I think for clerics it makes sense. I don't necessarily love attunement in terms of other things. I get the idea for it, but the idea but here, as far as a holy relic, it makes a lot more sense, in my mind anyway, that you would kind of, I don't know, have that attunement moment kind of thing. Swig of water for the working man. Before rolling, you may choose to offer any amount of favor and increase your roll by that amount. There are 4 possible results of the beneficence roll. First is boon, your beneficence is successful. The second one is mark, your covenant's influence manifests as a mutation or phantasm attached to the target. The mark lasts until the end of the next downtime turn. If you use favor for the roll, the effect is permanent. If you used favor for the roll, the effect is permanent. You cannot perform beneficence on one marked by your covenant. Well, that's an interesting one. Terrence says, gods love bribes. Yes, they do. So that one's really interesting. So it doesn't say whether you actually succeeded or not. So if you, I'm trying to see, so if you rolled to heal somebody, I'm going to heal you. Then I offer some favor, but my result is mark. Did the person get healed? I feel like they should, but they can't be healed again. At least not until the end of the next downtime turn. Downtime turn, we covered turns in part 1, and the downtime turn is a month. I think they should call it something other than a downtime turn. Unless they're saying that, so a downtime turn is supposed to be a month when you're doing downtime activities, but here they're using it as I guess I wonder, are they saying that if you had a downtime turn, or I guess you don't even, so you're adventuring, and then you have a downtime turn where you guys, essentially the party is not adventuring anymore and you're doing downtime activities, and so you take up a month. This is saying that if you roll this mark, it's on there until the end of that downtime turn. My question is, the downtime turn is a month, but is it that that this will fade or go away in a month, or is it linked to the mechanical downtime turn? In other words, if I'm in day 1 of an adventure, something horrible happens. I made a covenant with the Horned Mother. I roll that beneficence. I get mark, and so this person's marked day 1. If we're still adventuring on day 32, does the mark go away because it's been a month? Or is it literally, if we're adventuring for years, it doesn't matter, we have to take a downtime turn, and then at the end of that downtime turn, it fades away? I'd be kind of curious to know how that works, because it kind of sounds like you need to take that downtime turn. Jason Hobbs says, seems like you need to rest. Yes, it seems like it. It's just an interesting choice. So I think on the I would say the benefit is it encourages your players to take periodic time off, which I think is a great thing. And I'm actually building that into the kind of stuff that I'm running, where you basically have to take winters, kind of like the One Ring has it, where, hey, you're going to have some downtime where you're going to be able to do stuff, but you're not going to be really out adventuring because it's the middle of winter and nobody's out adventuring unless there's some emergency. It's really, winter is you're trying to get somewhere warm or safe and ride it out until spring kind of thing. So do all your stuff then. And having things that have end triggers, especially if they're kind of negative, that, hey, you have this thing and you're not going to be able to get rid of it until you actually take that prolonged rest, is going to encourage parties at certain times to figure out, like, man, we need to take that break and then take it, which I like. On the other hand, it is kind of mechanical, and there's that part in the fiction of, well, what does it matter if I'm resting all day? Like, does the god care if I'm literally resting for a month or if I'm just walking around for a month? Like, what difference does it make? I suppose you could come up with the why, but it's I kind of like it, but then I kind of feel like I wish it made more fictional sense, though. Maybe you would say for the mark, if they want to get rid of it, they have to do some kind of activity. That maybe is how I would do it. So I would probably just update this a little bit and say, if you have the mark, you're going to have to do something for the spend a downtime turn doing something for that deity. So in this case, for the Horned Mother, you're going to have to do something during your downtime to make it go away. And that way it kind of makes sense in terms of, like, can't be adventuring because I'm going to have to spend a month volunteering in the soup kitchen for the Horned Mother, right? So then it's like, okay, that to me makes more sense, as opposed to just magically, regardless of what you're doing, just spending downtime, suddenly it goes away. So I might change that up. Just slightly, just for me. So that was the mark result. Woe says, something has gone awry, very awry. The guide will roll upon the woe table. And then finally, Apotheosis. The target's body erupts, giving birth to a physical manifestation of your covenant, an avatar of a deity or belief otherwise made manifest. They are dead. Oh, well, you got to be careful if you're asking for the Horned Mother for healing. Terrence says, cleansing rituals, service, or fasting, there's a lot of ways to waste time religiously. Yes, I would just want to make that clear that that's what you're doing, and not just, hey, you've done downtime, at the end you do it. It's like, no, you're going to have to spend your downtime. If you want to get rid of the mark, you could opt not to, but then that person can't be healed by your Horned Mother covenant person. So you've got that player choice, but hey, you have this mark. If you want to get rid of it, yeah, you got to spend your downtime doing some kind of service. The Apotheosis is cool, but deadly for the person. I kind of dig the fact that, at least for this one testament, that asking for healing has a sort of there's a real possibility something could go horribly wrong for the person, for the subject of said healing. This stuff's all centered. I don't know why. So we get the roll. We're going to roll a d6. If you score more than a 10 or more, you get the boon. So obviously you cannot score a 10 just by rolling a d6. You're going to have added favor to it. 7 to 9, you get mark. 4 to 6, woe, and 2 to 3, apotheosis. So you've got almost a 50. Well, let's see. Hold on. What are you adding to it? Additional d6. So if you roll, so I don't know why they said 2 to 3, because you could get. Do you have to have? I guess maybe the idea here is you must have a relic. So really the range, I guess, is 2 to 7. If you don't use any favor, if you have one relic and you add no favor, it's a 2 to 7 roll. So 2 to 3, which is slightly less than half, is that apotheosis. So I assume you're almost fairly encouraged to add at least a few points of favor in there, just to get out of the apotheosis zone. But if you're desperate and maybe you've used up all your favor, maybe you just have to try it. Or you've got, on the other hand, maybe you have more relics, and so you're able to move up the table that way. You heal a number of HP equal to the amount rolled, regardless of the result of the roll. Okay, so if you are marked, you still get healed. You just can't be healed again. Even woe, you're still going to get your healing. You may reduce the amount healed by 10 in order to cure a condition. You may reduce the amount healed by 20 in order to cure a wound. Whoa, I don't know. How much favor can you get? That's a lot of favor. If I'm going to get 20, but I do like that. If you have a condition, you got to get 10 or more. If you can heal 10 or more, you can cancel that, but I'm guessing instead of the damage. And then a wound, which I don't think we've seen yet, but I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think we've seen it yet. You can also heal those but you got to take off 20. I'm not sure. I have no idea how hard it is to get those kinds of numbers. It seems difficult. Oh, Nightbot actually caught somebody. Good job, Nightbot. I think that's the first time I've seen Nightbot actually catch somebody I would like to be caught. We do have some blessings. Oh, wait a minute. First, a note. Those who are enemies of your covenant ought not to receive beneficence for fear of retribution. Okay, good idea. Blessings. The blessings of the Horned Mother grant you special abilities which you can perform at will. Unceasing sorrow. You connect empathically with an ally, sharing their pain. When either of you take damage, you may divide it between the two of you any way you wish. That's very nice. Eremitic Eyes. Upon observing a subject for a few minutes, you can determine in a general fashion the cause of their suffering. That's also pretty nice. Doctrines. Your covenant grants you the power to perform miracles, supernatural feats related to the eminences of your covenant. When you wish to do so, roll a d6, plus an additional d6 for each relic to which you are attuned. The amount you must roll depends on which doctrine the miracle falls under. A doctrine is a guide to the strength of a miracle. Each lists examples of miracles which fall under their purview. The higher the doctrine a miracle falls under, the higher the amount you must roll. Before rolling, you may choose to offer any amount of favor and increase your roll by that amount. There are 4 possible results of a miracle roll. Okay, so this is basically the same. So we have sort of slightly different than the ones for the beneficence. So boon is the top one. Hey, your beneficence is successful, though I think they mean your miracle, not your beneficence. I think that might be a little copy-paste error. The next one is pact. You must agree to form a pact with your covenant in order for the miracle to be successful. This may require a sacrifice, offerings, completion of a task, or some other undertaking commensurate to the power of the miracle performed. While you are bound to a pact with your covenant, you may not form another one. Whoops, I like that. Next one is woe. Your miracle is unsuccessful. Something has gone awry, very awry. The guide will roll upon the woe table. And then finally, apotheosis. Your miracle is unsuccessful. Your body erupts, giving birth to a physical manifestation of your covenant, an avatar of a deity, or belief otherwise made manifest. You are dead. So yes, you probably, and see, here's the thing. Here's where they went. It's just weird. There's little oddities. Well, I don't know why I pick up on them, but under beneficence, they started their table at 2 to 3. Even though they works exactly the same, in the miracle table, they start at 1 to 3. So, but basically the odds are essentially the same. So you definitely want to pump some favor in there. And I do like the idea that you might ask for a miracle and then explode into some kind of who knows what. I also like the idea of the pact. Yeah, you can make this happen, but you're gonna have to do something. It's kind of like you gayest yourself. We get the first doctrine. Oh, I see. The numbers actually go up. So the first doctrine, we've got separate numbers. I don't know what exactly are the doctrines, but in power level, they go at, I believe, in increasing order. So first doctrine. Oh, I see. Here's the description. So in the first doctrine, we're talking about miracles in the manner of communication with flora and herbivores, fertility and fecundity, the evocation of woe, the seeing of great distances, and empathy. The second doctrine encompasses miracles in the manner of resurrection of those recently fallen, growth and decay, invoking minor aspects of the Horned Mother. And then the third, we have more than 3. The third doctrine is miracles in the manner of true resurrection, true sight, and the bestowal of a major aspect of the Horned Mother. And finally, the fourth doctrine, miracles in the manner of summoning a divine agent of the Horned Mother, manipulation of time, and the sharing of minds. Jason Hobbs says, outrageous! Perhaps. Hey, Jason. Well, thanks for coming. Good luck with your prep. All right. So now how do we gain favor? This is what we need to know now. Gaining favor. By performing tasks that please your covenant or further your goals, you may permanently increase your amount of favor. Your favor only increases the first time a given task is performed. The completion of a pact cannot increase favor. Some examples follow. I would probably make it, maybe look, maybe you need one of those, you can only do this once, per downtime period or something, because I feel like making a pilgrimage, people make pilgrimages multiple times to the same place. And I think that makes sense that you can repeat it, but maybe once a year or something like that. I don't know, once for every 12 downtime things. I don't know. Otherwise, you might have to run out of things to do. So one favor you can get by making a pilgrimage to the beach of the Horned Mother. You can solve the plight of a stranger or convert through your word directly a follower to your cult. Yeah, I feel like, why couldn't you do these more than once? I would let people do this more than once, I think. Me think so. Or maybe some number of times. Maybe I'll roll some dice and maybe the odds get worse the more you do. I don't know, but I think that we want to encourage the kinds of play that, at least I think that exist with these kind of things. And I feel like getting a lot of converts is something that religious people do, figures do, and so that I think that would work. I don't know, but maybe make it sliding. You can get 5 favor by giving birth to a new life, uncovering a great deception for all to see, or founding a new temple or place of worship. You can get 15 favor by bringing endless misery upon the maggot queen, or altering the course of history. That's a very vague one. And then if you can manage to restore the Horned Mother's body to her, you gain favor eternal. Which, who knows what the heck that means, but I'm guessing it's a lot of favor. Let's see, what else we have here on the miracle front. So we did miracles. We did this. We're on the Testament, so let's go see woe. This is the table of woe. If the result of a beneficence or miracle roll is woe, the guide will roll on the woe table for the covenant. Woe tables should not be included in the testament for a covenant, but the guide should have them on hand. The target of a woe is the zealot if the woe is the result of a miracle, or the recipient of a beneficence if the woe was the result of a beneficence. If no stated duration is given, a woe lasts until the end of the next downtime turn. If favor was used for the roll, the effect is permanent. An example woe table for the Horned Mother follows, as well as a template woe table. If the guide does not wish to devise individualized woe tables for each covenant, they simply use the template table and decide the specifics as needed. Oh, Nightbot coming in strong. But I'm just going to block this. Yeah, you're blocked. Thanks, Nightbot. Loveface.xyz is blocked. So here's the woe table for the Horned Mother. We were going to roll a d20. I'm going to read, probably not read all these, I'll read a selection. Small thorns grow out of the target's skin, inflicting d4 damage. Target begins weeping uncontrollably. An eye opens on the target's forehead, is able to see the presence of magic. The target ages d6 years. The skin and flesh of the target's random limb sloughs off, leaving only bone behind. I think it probably could be written a little bit better, but I'm guessing you're going to roll for a random limb, and then it's basically going to turn to, or just almost become undead. It's going to turn to a skeletal limb. Not quite like phantom limb, but not too unlike it either. Target's left eye sees 10 seconds into the future, and target's right eye sees 10 seconds into the past. I don't know what you're supposed to do with that one. That's going to be some confusing stuff. Target begins to grow musty hair in patches over their body, and 2 bony nubs can be felt on their skull. Each day after the beneficence, target must make a physique saving throw. If the target successfully makes 3 saving throws in a row, the condition ends. If they fail 3 times in a row, they are turned into a black goat with a 3rd eye upon their forehead. Wow. They should probably rewrite that, because it doesn't have to be the beneficence. It could be from a miracle. And then we have a template of woe. Contemplate this, a template of woe. I feel like I'm gonna need to do a part 3 on it. It's too much here. Too much. We're on to sorceries. Grimoires and sorceries. Magic is a force that exists wholly outside the material plane, and so in order to be harnessed, indelibly tethered to that plane, they must be filtered through objects which can act as a conduit for such arcane energies. Such conduits are called grimoires. Grimoires are not simply passive receptacles for occult forces, however. The nature and shape of the grimoires is what gives form to the magical essences contained within, converting them into usable forms known as sorceries. And since grimoires are objects painstakingly created and jealously guarded, they each of them possess a requirement that must be met before the secrets of the sorcery within can be revealed. So first of all, I probably wouldn't call this a grimoire because I think of a grimoire as something like a big book. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of how I see it. I think this is really cool. I think I would maybe give it a different name. We have relics for the arts for divine, and I guess grimoires are the sort of magic version. But maybe a different name might be better than grimoires. I don't know. Taryn says Bony Nubs is a great name for a black goat. I agree. Maybe a one of those sort of not death metal, but maybe like fantasy. One of those. I don't know. Someone like a North European art metal band. Bony Nubs. When an errant discovers a grimoire, roll a d100 to determine what they find. After they have met the requirement to learn the sorcery, roll a d50 for the effect, d50, which describes the function that the sorcery performs, and a d12 for the sphere, which describes the subject a sorcery affects. The errant may then devise a sorcery which aligns with the effect and sphere rolled and is related in some way to the grimoire the sorcery is contained within. Themes listed with each grimoire are intended as guidance in this regard. Whew, that was a mouthful. As a general guide, a sorcery can deal 1d6 damage per renown of the caster, heal 1d6 damage for every 2 renown of the caster, can affect an area 10 feet or yards in diameter per renown of the caster, has a range of 20 feet or yards per renown of the caster. I'm trying to remember what renown is. I think it's a combination of different things. One thing I think that's interesting to note, and unless I've missed something, is both on the kind of quote-unquote cleric sort of things, that testament stuff, and then so far in here, your level doesn't seem to have any effect on this at all. You're not getting better at it as you level up. It seems entirely on you're rolling with the cleric stuff or that, what do they call it? I forget whatever the name of it was. You're basically rolling d6, you're adding favor to it, your level doesn't come in. And then for this, it seems like your renown, and I can't remember exactly how you calculate renown, but I'm not sure that your level enters into that either. And I'm not even sure we have levels here, actually. I don't think I've even seen levels. Did we run into experience or anything? So maybe I'm just jumping the gun and we're going to get something else. Have we covered it? I don't know that we have. As now as I'm thinking about it, I'm curious how that works. Okay. If the sorcery affects multiple creatures, it can affect a number of friendly errants or NPCs equal to the caster's renown, or a number of hostile NPCs whose total threat is equal to the caster's renown. When and if a particular sorcery requires a saving throw from its target to avoid or mitigate its effects is left to the discretion of the guide. As a general rule, if the caster targets an NPC with a sorcery whose threat is greater than their renown, the NPC is allowed a saving throw. The duration of the sorcery is determined by the caster's sorcery depletion value. If a sorcery is miscast, roll a d3 on the table for the grimoire of the sorcery, or the guide can decide an appropriate effect based on the sorcery and the situation. The precise effect, duration, and method of reversing the miscast, if any, are left to the guide's discretion. So we have a whole bunch of effects, d50 worth. I'm not going to read through all these, but protect, summon, control, quicken, slow, comprehend, so on and so forth. Liberate, reflect, seal, request, send, enter, become, replace, hinder, interrupt, harm, and there are many others. And then the spheres we have are D12. I'll read all these. Magic, space, time, mind, spirit, body, elements, dimensions, life, death, objects, and biota. And then we have a link here to grimoires. And then these are a whole bunch of items with themes and some miscast entries. Let's see the first one. The grimoire itself is a silvered hand mirror inlaid with runes. It requires you to learn, the requirement of this is to learn the sorcery, you must see yourself blink. Is that like a trick? Because you can't actually see yourself blink because your eyes closed, so you have to figure out how to sort of do something where you blink and your eyes aren't closed. I don't know. That's kind of cool. themes are reflection, mirror, and prediction. And so the 3 levels of miscast are miscast 1 to 2 is all surfaces appear reflective to the caster. Miscast 3 to 4 is the caster and all nearby are pulled into the mirror dimension. Whoa. And miscast 5 to 6 are all predictions the caster makes invariably end up being wrong. There's a whole bunch of these which are cool. I like this as an idea. I like a lot also. How many are these? He's got, looks like of these. Ooh, diggity. I'll read number 100. 100 is a copper balance and scales burnished to a brilliant gleam. Take it easy, Terrence. Thanks for joining the chat. Number 100, a copper balance and scales burnished to a brilliant gleam. The requirement is to learn the sorcery, you must find what is fair in that which is unfair. Ooh. The, I guess, spheres here are justice, proportionality, and impartiality. The 3 miscasts are, first, the caster believes altruism to be fundamentally unjust, and that the infliction of suffering on others is the only way to beget true fairness in the world. Second miscast is that the caster's head grows 3 times larger. And the third one is the caster's solution to any disagreement is to cut the baby in half, so to speak. Well, there you go. These are cool. I really like these conceptually. I do. Once we got to go back to sorceries. Is there anything else on sorceries? Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to call it quits here. Come back. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to end this one here. On your way out, if you could give a thumbs up to the stream, I would appreciate it. There's probably going to be, I'm thinking now it'll actually be Tuesday, if you're happen to be watching this live, when I will get back to that, because tomorrow will be the regularly scheduled OSR Reddit Roundup, and then Monday will be the first Appendix N book club stream on the short story Turian of Mir. So feel free, if you want to participate in that, to get that read by the weekend, and then you can hang out and know what everyone's talking about. Or you might know the story already. It's pretty famous as far as stories go. It's from Jack Vance, one of the Dying Earth stories. That's all I got for now. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you're watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later.